Hi, I'm Josh, and I'm so grateful that you've decided to give me a bit of your time as I talk about a few books that I've recently picked up and about how you booktubers have been influencing me. So all 4 of these books have been purchased as a direct result of me watching you booktubers out there. And the first one I would like to talk about is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. The reason I picked up this book is because some years ago I read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke, and while I didn't enjoy the book a ton, I found it kind of boring and largely forgettable from a plot point of view. What really stuck out to me from that book was the writing style. The prose in that book was just absolutely gorgeous, so I thought I would love to read a book from this author that maybe hits me more from a story perspective. And so when people were praising this very small book called Piranesi, I thought, well, I would love to give Susanna Clarke another shot here. And especially since it's a very small book, it's not much of a risk to take. So I expect that I'm going to get to this one fairly soon. Going from small to a thick chunker here, we have Malice by John Gwynne, the first book of the Faithful and the Fallen series. This is one that just comes up over and over again from the fantasy booktubers, and being largely a fantasy reader myself, I thought it just seems like the type of series I could get into. My worry is that it's going to be a little bit too big in terms of tons of characters, tons of points of view, just a lot of stuff happening. I don't necessarily like those big epic stories as much as I enjoy following just a much smaller band of characters. But there's not very many people who dislike this series. There are some out there, but not very many, so I figured I couldn't go wrong with Malice. Now, there are other series that I'm going to prioritize before this one, so it's probably going to be a while before I get to it, but at least I have book 1 ready to go for when I am ready to dive into it. Now my next one is also a book 1 of a fantasy series, and this is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, the first book of the First Law trilogy. Now I've had a bit of a roller coaster ride on BookTube with the First Law. At first, when I heard about it, I thought, well, people are speaking really highly about it. That's definitely going on my TBR. And then as time went by, I saw that it was being described as kind of grimdark fantasy, or at least light grimdark, if that makes sense. And I thought, I don't really read fantasy for the darkness. I read it more for the light and the escapism aspect. So I don't really know how I would feel about grimdark. So I ended up taking the First Law trilogy off of my TBR, and then as I just heard more and more people talking about the First Law, what really ultimately decided to make me prioritize it and put it back on the list is the fact that people were talking about how the characters are so amazing and the dialogue is super well done, and I am a sucker for good dialogue. That's why I love the book Catch-22 so much, or one of the reasons anyways, is because the dialogue is just second to none, really. So when I heard that great characters, amazing dialogue, I thought, you know what? I think I'm actually not just going to put this back on my TBR, but prioritize it to get to it soon. So I think I'm going to get to the First Law before I do the Faithful and the Fallen at this point. Although there still are a couple of other series I want to get through first before I get to the First Law. So Zara from Books with Zara, you are certainly part of why I'm holding this book in my hand right now. Before I get into my most surprising book here, let me take a quick second to thank my Patreon supporters, especially to my higher tier supporters, Joanna, Paul, Mojo Dam, and Asmadas Perfect. You are just amazing. You keep me motivated to keep making these videos, and thanks just doesn't seem like enough. But since that's all I have to offer, thank you so much. Now the last one is the one that shocks even me. The fact that I would purchase this book is amazing to me, because I have no interest at all in the horror genre. I've always said that during 16 years of work as a Toronto paramedic, I experienced more real-life horror than I ever want to have to deal with, to the point where it's given me severe PTSD and I'm on disability even. So I thought, with all this real life horror I have experienced and been elbow deep in, the last thing I want to do is bring horror into my entertainment time, my escapism time. I read books to get away from that stuff, to get out of my own head and the PTSD and all that stuff. And so the horror genre holds no appeal for me whatsoever. But wouldn't you know it, I found myself picking up The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward, a book that I picked up in the horror section. And the reason I decided to go with it was a couple of booktubers have just raved about what an amazing book it is, what a clever book it is. But even still, if it was any time of year other than October, I might have given it a pass. But being October, the spooky season, I thought, you know what? I'm going to step way outside of my comfort zone, and I'm going to pick up this book, and I'm already, well, probably about a third of the way through the book. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to obviously come back and do a video about the book when I'm finished it, so stay tuned for seeing whether that was a terrible idea or whether it turns out to be a success. But in any case, it's certainly a step outside of my comfort zone that was prompted by booktubers out there. So I just want to thank all you booktubers. You have really made my life just that little bit better by recommending great books for me to check out. So I appreciate you, and I certainly appreciate all of you who take the time to watch my video as well. Hey, it's Josh. Thank you so much for watching. I'm really proud of the... Hey, it's Josh. Thank you so much for watching. I'm really proud of the work I put into making this video, and I would be the world to... And so all four of these books and I thought, and if it was